Quite cold and bitter night, and is able to get a free view of the football. So UKIP really do look after its members. Anyway, tonight is quite a serious night because Tony Armstrong here is our candidate for the Sussex Police Authority, and a lot of people have been saying how they haven't really heard about it, they don't know what's going on, they don't really understand the basis of it. Well, I'm hoping tonight all of us here will be fortunate to hear Tony explain something, and the reasons why Tony has actually taken the time and trouble and gone to the expense of standing. So, without more ado, Tony, please, thank you.
I've not got a prepared speech, so I don't believe in them. Ask me questions and I'll give you a straight answer. Before we start, how many people here are actually members of UKIP? So there are one or two who are. Okay. It doesn't matter. I was going to say, don't vote for me because I'm a UKIP candidate. And whoever the candidate is, don't vote for the party. Vote for who you believe to be the best person for the job. Because this is an important job. It's probably more important than being an MP. Do you know what the job entails?
No idea.
Right, okay, let's start from that. At the moment, Sussex Police are, for want of a better word, governed by the Sussex Police Authority. Sussex Police Authority consists of 7 councillors and 8 other members who are called independent. I have no idea who appoints them or where they come from, but they are all appointed by various bodies. They oversee the budget for the police authority and hold the Chief Constable to account, and they have the power to hire and fire the Chief Constable. The Stat's power invested in 17 police authority members is being abolished on the 22nd of November, and the new police and crime commissioners, who are one individual elected directly to the job, will take over. He will have all the power that the police authority has, or she, because there is a lady standing. They'll have all the power of the police authority, plus there is a statutory responsibility for victims, which is new. The police authority doesn't actually have a statutory responsibility. And I understand that in the fairly near future, funding for various other statutory agencies will be routed through the PCC. The PCC is what's called in legal terms a corporation sole, exactly the same as the Chief Constable is a corporation sole. It means that that one person has total responsibility. Don't have to consult with anyone else, don't have to get anyone else's approval, you can do what you want. Why? It's possible that if the PCC decides to spend all the money that would normally be allocated to victim support and all the other support agencies, you can take all that, buy himself a helicopter and have great fun for 3.5 years. I imagine that he wouldn't get re-elected. But it's legally possible. So you have to be absolutely certain that the person that you elect is going to do the job properly. Naturally, I believe that I'm the best person for the job. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Have I sort of given you an idea of what the PCC is going to be doing? A bit more. The government have said that they want a directly elected person, so that that person is highly visible, highly contactable, and will represent the public in their police area to the police. They will tell the Chief Constable what the public want. They will agree with the Chief Constable the strategic aims of the police service in that area. And then it's up to the Chief Constable to actually go and get it done. The PCC will have no operational control over the police officers at all. It's completely out of his hands, it's up to the Chief Constable. If the Chief Constable doesn't get the job done properly or sufficiently well, it is open to the PCC to say, well, here's your P60, and recruit another Chief Constable. Of course, there are employment laws which protect employment, so that's all got to be complied with, but basically, the PCC has the power to hire and fire Chief Constables. And that's where his persuasive authority over the Chief Constable comes from, but it is only persuasive. I think I'm the best person for the job because none of the other candidates in Sussex have got any police experience at all. Some will say, two of them will say, yes, I've served on the police authority. Well, that's not quite the same thing as actually being a police officer. Some will say, I've got business experience, I've built up business, sold it on. Well, this is a bit more than a one-man business being built up and sold on. The budget at the moment is over £200 million. That budget, incidentally, has to be settled by the end of January, so that it can go to the local authorities or to the police and crime panel, who are a higher body that has oversight over the PCC. And the PCP have to approve the budget. They can't say we don't like it. They can say it's too high, or they can say it's too low, or they can say yes, we're happy with that. If they send it back to the Commissioner saying it's too high or it's too low, the Commissioner can make minor adjustments and send it back to the panel, and the panel can say, well, we still think it's too high or too low, or it's okay, but even if they don't like it, that's it. They only have oversight, they don't have power of veto. So the PCC really is going to be quite a powerful person. Are there any questions so far?
Yes, you talk about your experiences in the police force. What about experiences financially?
None at all. I can balance my own budget, which I suppose is in the same sort of league, but only very, very barely. But whoever takes over will also take over en masse the existing police authority staff. There is a chief executive and there is a chief finance officer. These are two statutory appointments which you have to have, and they keep you on the straight and narrow. There is a deputy CEO and a deputy finance officer, and all of them will be liaising at their own levels with the equivalent with the chief constable staff. So I don't need to worry about the nuts and bolts of the finance because I've got professionals to do that for me. The job of the PCC is strategy. Farsight, looking ahead, which way are we going to go, point the chief constable in that direction. Okay. You asked about my police experience indirectly. I spent just under 3 years in Kent, joined in Sheerness, went to Sevenoaks, and because I couldn't afford to live in Sevenoaks with the money that I was getting paid, I applied to transfer to this big police force up the road, and it was literally just up the road, and I was accepted into the Metropolitan Police in 1969. Give you an idea of how much of an increase it was, my take-home pay went up from £48 a month to £64 a month. Actually, a pound is worth a pound. It was quite a big proportionate increase. That we got it by working 3 rest days a month and loads of overtime, plus a London allowance. Went to Sheerness, Streatham, which by London terms is a quiet middle suburb police station. I didn't know whether I was punch board or counter something when I got there because it was so much busier than Sevenoaks. But that gets you into the swing of things, and after 7 years I went into traffic division, which is now called roads policing, and I spent the rest of my service, apart from 16 months when I got promoted to sergeant, in traffic division. The last 5 years of that service, because traffic division was no longer centralised, it was now locally controlled on an area basis, and the powers that be decided that the divisional inspectors had now become responsible for custody suites, maybe in several different police stations in their division, and they were absolutely rushed off their feet. They had responsibility for fatal accidents. So I thought, well, the fatal accident investigation takes place with traffic officers, and traffic sergeants don't have anything to do, so we give the job to them. So the last 5 years I spent doing, amongst other things, liaising with the families of people, most of whom they were parents whose children had been killed in road accidents. And it wasn't just one visit, it was repeated visits, sometimes over as much as a year. And when you're dealing with a family close up and over an extended period for 5 years, you don't forget the effect that that sort of incident has on the victims. So I'm very much in favour of victim support. I spent an afternoon recently at Victim Support Regional Office in Shoreham. I was very impressed with what they did, and I can say now, so I'm not going to make promises that I don't know what can be, but I can say that victim support will be supported by the PCC if I'm elected. And if possible, we don't know yet how the funds are going to work out, but if possible I'd like to see their funding increased, because I think they do a terrific job and they need more support. But I shall be inviting all the agencies that have anything at all to do with crime reduction, like alcohol abuse, domestic violence support, all sorts, drug abuse. If it's got any result which relates to crime, that comes within the remit of the PCC. So I'm inviting all those groups to put in a one-page summary, who they are, what they do, what sort of money they would like, what they're going to spend it on, and how do we know it's going to work? Because, like all of you, this is public money that we're spending. It's come out of your pocket, it's come out of my pocket. There's not enough of it. We can't afford to waste it. So whatever is going to be supported must be justified by results. If you want to try something new, you're going to have to make a very, very good case. There is room for something that hasn't been tried before, but mainly I should be looking for evidence-based solutions, because we just can't afford to waste the money. Other things that I would like to do are to extend neighbourhood policing into the whole of Sussex. Now, it's in a good many parts of Sussex at the moment, but it's not everywhere. Now, I happen to believe that neighbourhood policing works because it gives you your local officer or your local team. They stay in an area, you get to know them, they get to know you as people. So you talk to each other, and you can talk to them, and you can give them intelligence which leads to reduction in crime, because we know where to target our efforts. A large proportion of crimes are committed by a very small proportion of criminals. If you can take that small proportion out of circulation, it has a massive effect on the crime figures. This is known. I've done it myself in the past when I was working in London. It is intensive. It does mean that a team has to concentrate on probably one person at a time. But they follow that person around. It's all very discreet, called surveillance. You follow them around, you find out who their mates are, you find out where they go, and sooner or later you're going to follow them while they commit a crime, probably a burglary. and you can nick them in the act. It's great. It really does work. So targeted policing is going to be a high priority for me. At the other end of the scale, because this is talking about officers on foot patrolling in an area, I think we need a bigger concentration on road policing, personal experience of that. As well as that, of course, as well as putting more police officers on the main roads in fast cars, who will not necessarily be able to stop and talk to you, or you don't want them to stop and talk to you, that's the point. They're doing a different job. But as well as being able to deal with dangerous driving and antisocial driving, and there's far too much of that around, as we all know, they are a very valuable tactical reserve. They've got their own communications, they've got their fast cars, they are all experienced officers, they are all volunteers, they all absolutely love what they're doing. And if you can use them as a tactical reserve to back up the response on divisions, you're a winning all round. You might have to possibly cut down the number of divisional response, but I don't know how the figures are going to work out on that yet. That's the main thrust of the way I'm thinking. Are there any questions on that? Well, I have another shrub.
Can the chairman ask a question?
Please do.
40% of the current police budgets is actually absorbed by pension funds and costs. How are you going to overcome this growing threat to all police budget areas by trying to fund such a huge part? You're also, the police authorities currently are not subject to the FSA, who are cracking down on private companies. I just wonder what your thoughts are on controlling the police pension situation.
The first thought that comes to mind is not one that I would want to follow through on, that's get rid of the pensioners. That is obviously a non-starter. It's something that it's a statutory responsibility, you're going to have to live with it. I don't know what else you can do.
Do you find there's any conflicts of interest in resolving this issue? Because the pension funds are actually held by the police in, as I understand it, each authority has its own pension fund. And it interacts that you can move without loss of anything to another police authority, as you can in general government and local authorities. Therefore, there is no normal conventional control over pension costs. You're not complying, the police are not complying with the statutory treasury requirements on limiting the amount of contribution. Do you feel that's a threat that's going to affect the police commissioner in the next 3 years or 4 years, whatever your term is?
I would like to think not. You say statutory controls. I'm sure that all the police authorities do comply with statutory controls, whatever they are. I have no personal knowledge of police pensions, apart from the fact that mine comes from the Home Office through the Bank of England. It's always been the case that existing police officers subsequently will pay for the pensions of past officers, retired officers. That's always been the case. If anything's going to be done about it, I think it's going to have to come through central government.
Thank you, that's a good answer.
Thank you. Are there any other concerns?
Tony, you talk on your leaflet about I'm not a politician.
I'm not.
What
You can probably tell I'm not a politician.
What benefit does that make for the role of the PCC?
The PCC should not be overtly political. Now, obviously, at the sort of level that the PCC is going to operate at, there are going to be decisions made which are of their very necessity of a political nature. Can't help that. but the PCC should not be overtly political. Police officers are not allowed to take an active part in politics. So I didn't take an active part in politics for 30 years. I wasn't a politically restricted officer when I worked for Worthing Council, but they don't encourage you to take an active part in politics when you're working in local authorities for exactly the same reason as the police are not allowed to take part in active part in politics. So again, I might have joined UKIP in 2006, I think, but I was only a branch member and I went to the occasional branch meeting, and that's really all I did. So I really don't think that a politician is going to be the best person for the job, because there's always the thought at the back of their mind, well, if they're the same party as the government, are they going to follow the government line, whatever it is, automatically? If it's a different parties of what's in government, are they going to be continually having a fight with the Home Office? That doesn't apply to me. And quite apart from anything else, as I've said before, all UKIP candidates, for whatever they're standing, if they are elected, they are not whipped. We've got a lot of UKIP councillors already. They're not whipped. They don't do what the party line is, although they probably will, because usually the party line is whatever is sensible. But if it's something else which is better for their constituents, then they'll do that. And the party is quite happy with that. First public meeting I was at in Nancy, I was stood on a platform like this. Nigel was sitting at the other end of the table, and I said publicly, if there is a clash between UKIP policy and what the party wants me to do, I'm afraid people of Sussex are going to win every time. That raised a cheer up there. But Nigel Farrar stood at the other end of the table, and he was nodding, he was quite happy with that. So I'm not political, and I'm not a politician.
Tony, first time I've come here, I've only become a member.
Well,
I've only become a member second year. I was going to ask about the prisoners, all the criminals in prison. Are they allowed to vote or not? Can they vote?
my understanding is that at this present time, prisoners are not allowed to vote. Our Prime Minister has said that he has no intentions of allowing them to vote. We'll have to wait and see what he says. I suspect he'll fold. But as far as I'm concerned, prisoners should not have to vote. They're not called outlaws for nothing.
You were a police officer. I think I can't remember the rank you got to.
I achieved the heady rank of sergeant. And as anyone who's ever been in the services will know, it's the sergeants that make things happen.
Would you find it at all awkward or embarrassing being in charge of a police constable, the chief constable?
Not at all.
Right.
No. There are going to be 41 new PCCs, excluding London. 41 new PCs, 41 existing chief constables. And these 41 pairs are going to be like newly married couples. A lot is going to depend on the relationship that they have one with the other. So that's 41 probably different relationships. If the chief constable is very strong and the PCC is weak, then the chief constable is going to run the PCC. If the PCC is very strong and the chief constable just rolls over, then the PCC is going to run it. What I would like to see happen is the PCC brings a new viewpoint to the professional police views of the chief constable, and they get together and they reach a consensus. I think that's the best way forward. And I anticipate, not having met Mr. Richards, but I anticipate that is how we are going to get on. But I'll say, sir, Mr. Richards, you can call me sergeant. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this is just really a minor one, but talking to people in the street, etc., a lot of people have been very, very upset by the amount of police stations that have closed. And although they say that to centralise it, it has actually made policing better. The people on the street actually don't think so.
I'm glad you raised that. I can tell you that at the moment, the police authority are about halfway through what they call a root and branch review of their estate. That's the whole of the police estate. All the buildings they've got everywhere. Are they in the right place? Do we still need them? Communities change, policing changes, so the building needs change. I don't think there's much point in having a police station open in a town or in an outskirts of a town if no one goes to it. There is a considerable cost saving in centralising as much as possible. I can't see any clash between centralising what can be centralised and my idea, which I've actually put on the website, of having neighbourhood policing team bases. So each neighbourhood team, and I've said we want that to extend over the whole of Sussex, each team has a local base in the area where it's based. It doesn't need to be very much, it certainly doesn't need to be a police station, it might be a shop, it might even be a flat. Anything's possible, just somewhere safe where they can keep their gear and operate from, so they don't have to travel miles to get to their particular neighbourhood. Now, if, for example, the police volunteers, do any of you know about the police volunteers? No, didn't think so. I didn't know about them until July, when I read about it in the Sussex Police report. There is a system, not at all publicised, of police volunteers, where if you are a member of the public and you have some particular skill, or even if you just have some spare time, you get vetted by the police, because obviously they can't just let anyone into the net. You get vetted by the police, given whatever training you need, and then you can help them out. Now, it might be that you're a graphic design artist, so you help them out doing graphic design. It might just be you're a neighbour and you can come in and you can man the front counter for a couple of hours. But I think that's a terrific idea, and I think it should be encouraged and greatly more publicised, because it puts increased liaison and meetings between the police and the public. Same with special constables. Katie would like to have a special constable in every village. Most special constables, if they're really enthusiastic, might work 1 8-hour shift a week. Most of them only do 4 hours a week. So you get 4 hours for part-time police officer once a week. I definitely agree that we should have more special constables, but we need to put them with regular police officers to bulk them out a bit, and then they can be used as perhaps part of a neighbourhood policing team, and they can be very useful like that. PCSOs are good, but what they do, they act as the eyes and the ears of the police force. They're not police officers, and they don't have police powers. But we've got them now, so we might as well use them. I don't think that we should necessarily get rid of them. We need to recognise them for what they are. They're not police officers.
The fact that almost everybody here is a member of UKIP and are going to vote for you means that the average voter is not the slightest bit interested in this election, because otherwise this hall would be packed with people. Have you any plans to get yourself really well known in the area, like letters to the press, interviews to the press, trying to get on television, get your name known so that they can vote for you?
I have recorded a spot for BBC television, which will apparently be shown in two halves, once on the 12th and once on the 13th of November, I believe. I've done interviews with various radio stations, most of whom seem unfortunately to be based in Brighton, but I've got interviews with a couple of Worthing radio stations day after tomorrow, so that will be going out on the air, given various press interviews, and I'm trying to get as many meetings like this going as possible. You're not wrong. This has been very badly publicised right up until now, and even now the publicity which is coming from the Home Office and the Electoral Society is the Electoral Commission. Yes, it's not exactly a lot.
Because I noticed in Lansdowne Hotel, in Eastbourne where I'm from, we didn't have many there, we didn't even have as many as this.
Yeah.
And that was a morning coffee.
Yeah.
That was at Lansdowne.
Yeah.
Lansdowne.
I'm afraid we're pretty much stuck with it. So all the candidates are doing the best to get themselves known, but because the constituency is so big, I mean it's about 10 or 11 parliamentary constituencies within this one police area, and it's a lot to get around, especially when you've got not a lot of funding.
And what about being on, getting on the news and all that? Can you get on the news more often?
I can try, but
That would help, wouldn't it?
if they don't want to talk to me, there's no way I can make it.
There are in fact 23 parliamentary seats in Sussex.
Is that
East and West, yeah.
That's even more than I thought. Yeah, so 23 parliamentary constituencies. One is quite enough for most people. So, and certainly the big parties have well-developed teams in each constituency. We're doing our best, but we're not quite as well developed as the others yet.
On the election things, why do you have first choice, second choice? You know, we've listened to you, you sound pretty good, and what I like about it is the fact that you're a policeman, you know what they're talking about. So, what, nothing to do with the party, so yeah, your go is number one. But why just put down Joe Blogs because you've got to do a second one? Why are they doing the voting? Why not just vote for you? Why? Because
well, you probably remember Mr. Cameron talking fairly recently about it was when the referendum was on about changing the voting system, and he was absolutely in favour of first past the post system. Seems to have changed his mind a bit because this has come from the government.
yeah,
I have no idea why they've gone for this supplementary vote.
it's going to make it more complicated.
But you don't have to use the second vote.
Yes.
You don't have to use it. But I would warn you, if you're only going to vote for one person, make sure that your cross goes in column 1. If you don't put anything in column 1, your is lost completely. It will not be counted. You've got to put it in column 1. If you decide that there is another candidate you don't mind supporting in case your first choice doesn't get elected, then you can put your cross against their name in column 2. But if you don't put anything in column 1, that's it. Lost vote.
So will you be able to do anything about increasing the number of police they actually have on the ground?
That's what I aim to do.
And how
I aim to root around in all the back offices and see what all the officers there are doing. If they're doing something that doesn't need a police power, why aren't they doing it out on the street?
I mean, new recruits from school, cadets, that way. Will you be increasing that or?
Well, recruitment is a matter for the Chief Constable, and he has to work within the budget he's got. So, if we can increase the budget he's got for recruitment, off we go. But don't forget that recruiting additional officers brings quite a big overhead because you've got to pay them every year for possibly the next 30 years.
I think the question really is one of visibility, isn't it, on the streets? Are you saying that you'd like to increase the visibility?
Yes.
Number of police walking around the room?
It all comes back to neighbourhood policing. I believe that neighbourhood policing is a terrific idea. It's not one person on a beat and then you keep them there. You have a slightly larger area and you have a team of officers who cover that area. And they can cover it well. They can get to know the people in their neighbourhood. You can get to know them, more importantly. You'll get to know who they are, what their name is. Eventually, you might even talk to them as they walk past. And gradually that rapport will build up, and that's what I want to see.
They did that years ago in 1950, and they had all the bodies on the streets, and you actually see one there and then, and if you were lost, they would carry the road map, and let you know where this road is, where that road is. But all of a sudden, I don't know whether it was because Thatcher got in, but everything after she got in, everything seems to have gone the other way. Where's all our police gone?
I joined in Kent in 1966, and I spent the first couple of years walking a beat, apart from when I was in the one motor which patrolled the Isle of Sheppey, responding to emergency calls. The rest of the time you're walking the beat. Then I moved to Sevenoaks, and they just introduced what they called unit beat policing. So short of police, they couldn't cover all the beats. So the idea was you give a PC a car and you tell them to cover 3 beats. That didn't really work. Then I went to, very soon after that, I went to Streatham, where again, they had just introduced unit beat policing. And they had a Morris 1000, terrific car. You'd be so amazed how fast they go in second gear. Morris 1000, personal radio, and instead of, I don't know if you know Streatham, but it's divided by the A23. And there were a number of beats one side and a number of beats the other side. And instead of having officers on each, you had one covering the east side, one covering the west side. And I thought, okay, I can work with this. I went out with my map, because I hadn't got a clue where I was. No sooner had I parked up and started to get out and walk around by one of my 3 beats, get a call over the radio, can you go and deal with an incident somewhere else, which is the other end of Streatham. So walk back to the car, drive down to the other end. And it became more and more like that. We were a little response unit. You never had a chance to get out of the car. That's when the rot started. So we've got to get back to that somehow.
Do you think, form filling has been a major factor as well? Police officers are stuck behind their desks.
Tell me about it. Have you seen the pile of forms, the MG 1, 1A, 2, 3, 5, 7, several 9s, 11, 14, not forgetting 13, 15, 16, and it goes all the way up to about 25. The MG forms are the forms that the CPS like the police to fill in, so that a CPS solicitor can go to, yeah, okay, prosecute. There are hundreds of them. And when this scheme, delightful scheme started, there was very little computerisation, so they all had to be written out by hand. Fortunately, in the intervening years, computerisation has improved, so now it's all, you put it on the computer and you put the arrestee's name in once, and then it comes out on all these other different forms, instead of having to write it out, and that's improving. IT can definitely still improve. There are lots and lots of different systems, and they don't talk to each other. I do know that Sussex Police have this problem in hand, and they're working to make all their systems talk to each other. Not only do they need to talk to each other within the police force, we need them to talk to other police forces outside, and ideally they should be talking to all the support agencies, such as victim support and so on. They all need to talk to each other. Then you can have a situation where make an arrest, take the prisoner to the police station, fill in a quick computerised form, and that's it. Anything else should be done by clerical officers who are employed just to fill the forms in based on what the police have told them. You don't need police powers to fill forms. So, yes, there is too much form filling.
They want to get off their backsides and do the walking more. They're writing out too much paperwork. Get out and do a walk.
Getting back to the subject of more coppers on the beats, I'm under the impression that from time to time we hear central governments, Cameron or the Home Secretary, announce that they are going to put more coppers on the beats. So whose decision is it? Do you have to wait if you're going to improve the number in our area? Do you have to wait for them to
you've got your figures from, but since the Conservatives took over, the total number of police officers in this country has dropped by 7,000.
Have they announced that they're going to drop?
By the time they've finished the cutback programme, and this is the existing cutback programme, not including the next one, which will probably follow on, there will be another 15,000 gone.
So how can you reverse
So what I would like to do as a PCC is to see if we can save officers and cut some fat somewhere else, rather than just cutting police officers. Police officers, unfortunately, are expensive. They are the most, it's like any industry. The people who are doing the job are probably your most expensive asset. But they are an asset. We don't want to lose them. So we need to make sure that any cuts come elsewhere before we start cutting into the number of police officers. I can't give you much more detail. I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to make stuff up. I can't give you much more detail because I don't know. I've got to get into the job and find out exactly what's going on. I've got a rough idea, but I haven't got enough detail.
Without wishing to make yourself redundant in terms of the new role, do you think there are too many chiefs then? Too many layers of bureaucracy?
Within the police service?
Yeah.
That has been said before. I know that it's been addressed in Sussex because they have quite recently amalgamated a number of divisions, and they're now down to East Sussex, West Sussex, Brighton and Hove. They're 3 divisions, but there used to be about 6. So taking a division out releases a superintendent. It's redundant. As long as we make sure that that's gone. Yes, we need to make it flatter.
So if they're made redundant, then they obviously get a golden handshake and a large pension.
Superintendents, by their very nature, usually have quite a few years' service. And most of them will be more than happy to take early retirement. So they get their pension.
So it means you're still paying for them?
We're going to pay for them anyway, even if you keep them on, we'll still be paying for them.
What I can't get my head around is that in real terms the actual budget has gone up, the amount of people in this country has gone up, and yet we seem to be getting less of the police force visible to us.
The Sussex Police budget has been cut by 20%.
Since
2010-11. And next year there will be another. No, altogether it will be 20% cut between 2010 and 2015. Sorry, my mistake. Over that 5-year period, the budget will be cut by 20%. Now, the information that I have is that so far they are on target to achieve the overall cut. But it's going to get harder. All the easy stuff has gone. What remains is hard decisions. What are we going to cut next? There is quite a bit of room for manoeuvre when we look at the police estate, and I expect to get quite substantial savings there.
Excuse me, is this selling off the police estates? Are we talking about
Possibly.
properties that the police...
If we've got premises in the wrong place, there's no point having them. We need buildings and assets where they are needed, not somewhere else. And as I say, the communities change, the nature of police work changes, so because it's all changing, the estate should change to match it. I've mentioned IT, which is a possible source of saving. We're looking at vehicle contracts to see how we can save money on vehicle contracts. There are other programs, I mean, even making sure that everyone turns the lights out when they leave an office. Doesn't sound much, one office, but when you've got a big estate and everyone's turning all the lights out, over the course of the year, that again, is quite a substantial saving that can achieve 6-figure savings. So there are ways of of making sure that we're not cutting too much bone yet, but it's probably going to come, and that's when the really hard decisions will have to be made. There's no way around that unless the government eases their or changes their mind and reinstates some of the cuts. The other alternative is that the police precept goes up, which I don't want to do because I have to pay that just as much as you do.
That actually goes, that's calculated in our council tax, isn't it, the precept, so that goes to the police. And although Cameron has said that the council tax is not going up, in fact, the precept for the towns and villages are going up year on year.
The level of the police precept will be set by the PCC.
Yes, and that comes out of our council tax, not the precept for the town and villages. Because when we get our council tax bill, you've got your pie chart and it shows us what percentage goes to the police, etc.
Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, Seaford Town Council, none of that in the precept, for Seaford Town precept, goes to the police. From what I understand.
I'm not sure.
No.
When the precept was established, it was for fire and police basically. But now I'm not sure which pot the police money comes from. Right. I think it's probably Police Sussex.
My understanding is that the local authority will set the council tax. The police authority, to be replaced by the PCC, says we want so much for the police per household or per premises, and probably the fire and rescue, if they have the precept as well, that will be done in the same way. That precept is then the police precept is collected with the council tax, and then the local authorities forward it on to the police authority.
But Tony, isn't the precept only for the local policing aspects? No. The rest of it is grants from central government.
The Sussex Police income mainly police grant from the Home Office and the police precept. They are allowed to charge for special services, but that's an extra.
But it comes from government?
No, that's, for example, special services are when extra police officers are provided to ensure public safety in the public area.
But you charge that against, say, a football club?
Exactly. Although there has been a case in the High Court fairly recently where I think it was Manchester City, challenged the special charge that they were being charged by their local police force, and the judge, that sufficiently on the level, said no, this is a public order commitment, and as such it should come out of public funds. So you can only charge for the police officers inside the football ground, not those outside. So that's quite a bit of income that's been lost. But that's a special service agreement where someone pays for police, additional police.
I think actually the payment for police comes right down to the local level. I was until recently a parish councillor here in Ringmer. We've got 4,500 population with a budget of 100,000 total. And we have to spend around 20,000 paying for extra PCOs to turn up to cover what we felt was a minimum requirement.
What proportion of the total police budget for Ringmer would that be?
Nothing came out of the council precepts for the parish.
Ringmer doesn't normally pay for it, it comes out of the council, county council. But because of the gap, we were not getting sufficient attention to 20,000 pounds to pay for extra PCOs to turn up.
And did you get them?
Yes.
Well,
That's a special service agreement.
That's what the precept.
Well, I mean, basically, we should be getting the cover which we're paid for through our council tax.
yeah.
I'm going to hide behind the Chief Constable here. The operational deployment of officers is a matter for the Chief Constable.
But you see, at the end of the day, Tony, this is what the ordinary person is concerned about, that we constantly pay more and more and get less and less. And they're not going to have
And this is where the PCC comes in, because he can say to the Chief Constable, I'm getting loads and loads of complaints from Ringmer that they're not getting any police cover. What's going on? And then it's up to the Chief Constable to explain what he's doing about it.
In other words, if you pay for more, you'll get something.
Well, that's an option, but if he's not providing sufficient service which should be covered from the public funds, from the precept, then he's opened up as a challenge. And it's up to the PCC to do that challenge.
Yes. Because we're not careful, we become like America, where you have vigilantes. When something really serious happens, people will take it into their own hands if the police aren't around, and you become just like America. And people could be quite innocent of something.
Yes, I would hate to see anyone going down that route. If anyone does feel that they want to do something about it, join the specials. Do it properly. Get police powers and get police training and get police backup. But I'll take your point. It's if you're not getting enough police cover, then you need to talk to the police authority who are they? Where are they? Who are they? This is why the PCCs are being put forward to be elected, so that there's one person who is going to be really, really visible. Hopefully that will be me, and I shall be able to help you out.
You were mentioning, Tony, that you actually will kind of start trailing known criminals who operate in gangs. How do you overcome the fact that immediately they know that's operating, they start to move out of the police area who are trailing them into another area where there's uncoordinated continuance of cover, and they do the burglaries there? So if you start to concentrate them on the towns, they move out to the rural areas, and that's why we suddenly find that when the police are doing that activity in the big towns, all of a sudden the rural areas start to suffer.
Yeah.
They then pull off from hitting them in the towns, and then they move back to the towns and the rural areas go back quiet.
It's called displaced activity. It's a known phenomenon. It doesn't matter what you do or where you do it. The guilty parties are always, once they get to know about this, they're going to go somewhere else. That will always happen.
Yep.
As far as targeted villains moving out of the police area, that's not a problem, because every police constable in England and Wales has all of his powers everywhere in England and Wales. So you can go anywhere. There's no such thing as a border. And with the airway radios that were just being introduced when I retired, the radio goes with you. You can talk to anyone anywhere. So you don't even lose communications. Great.
Tony, going back to the police, whoever gets in the next election through UKIP, the police have got uniforms at the moment, haven't they? Are they going to have undercover police officers going around as well, or not?
You already do.
They do?
You already have undercover officers.
Oh, right, because I've never seen it.
The idea is that they're undercover and you don't know what they're I'm not suggesting anything new.
I'm reminded of Tommy Cooper who went out pricing camouflage trousers for Good Friday.
Have we any more questions, or are we kind of done?
Speed cameras, would you increase them or decrease them, or do you have any narrow them?
Sorry.
Speed cameras.
Speed cameras are, I believe, now under the control of partnerships consisting of police and local authorities. I don't think they should be anywhere where there isn't a specific need to make sure that people slow down. I think the money that originally they were brought in so that there was some unlikely justification for reducing the number of road policing officers. Personally, I'd rather have an extra road policing officer because he can deal with drunk drivers. He can deal with the driver who goes past the speed camera at 60 miles an hour on the wrong side of the road. He can go past the speed camera, or he can deal with someone who goes past the speed camera at 30 miles an hour and he's absolutely rat-arsed. Speed cameras can't deal with that. I would much rather have a person behind the wheel of a police car dealing with bad driving.
It's the person who goes past the speed camera at 40 miles an hour in the middle of the night when there's not a soul around.
They don't have discretion.
Yeah.
They just go.
And they got some of these flashes like they have in Eastbourne, like you're supposed to do 30 miles an hour. And I think that was a waste of money because some of them are still going over 30 miles and it just flashes, you know, and they still get away with it. So I think that's a waste of money.
There are informative signs which flash, you know, excuse me, 30 miles an hour.
30 miles an hour, yeah.
Look, 30 miles an hour sign.
Slow down at 30
Yeah.
miles an hour.
And they're quite effective. There are some cameras, or boxes rather, speed boxes, which don't actually have a camera in. They just have a flash unit. So you get a flash. And you think, oh God, you spend the next 2 weeks thinking, oh my God, get through. Because there are more boxes than there are cameras. Cameras are the expensive part of the kit. So they get moved around from box to
Yeah, because
box.
I've noticed round up near, where is it now, they're going up off Polgate Way, I've noticed up the urban areas, they've got these round signs like 40 miles an hour, and what gets me really annoyed is when you come into a bend, they say do 40 miles an hour, and how could you do 40 miles an hour to put in on a bend? Can you work that one out? They put these actual speed things in the wrong places. You know, instead of doing it further away off the bend. And there's no way someone's going to do 40 miles an hour coming off a bend.
Yeah.
Does that sound ridiculous to you?
Does a bit.
That's what I've noticed as well.
But so it's a combination of highway authority and police. So. I think that's what you
I'd just
sit
like to say
down.
one thing.
Please do.
Having come here tonight and listened to Mr. Armstrong, I'm so convinced of his experience and his grasp of his brief that we should all go out now and tell everybody how he is the right man for the job.
Yes. Well, I don't envy Tony because when he signs the form that says he accepts the appointment of the election and that he will do the best of his duty with the knowledge that he's got and all the things and obstacles that are going to be put in his way, I think he does deserve a special round of our appreciation. But even standing and performing, I think, a vital constitutional function. Thank you, Tony. It's been a wonderful day.
Can I just say, before you go, we have a number of leaflets which you can take with you to give to your friends and neighbours or put through doors. And we've got 3,000 leaflets here tonight, so there's plenty here, so you can take 10, you can take 100, you can take 200, but please get them out there before the 15th of November.
And can I add my thanks to all the unknown people, most of whom I've never met, who have been distributing leaflets for me. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Tony.